you ever had to organize an event or throw a party, and the number one thing that worries you and causes you anxiety as it approaches is that you have to find a way to actually send the invitations and then track the responses? I know I have. My name is Kaitlin, and I am an educator and a recently no-code developed data enthusiast. And I have struggled in the past, especially when organizing events that are for important external stakeholders who have a great deal of influence over the program that I work for. You want to leave the best impression, and at the same time, you don't have a lot of financial resources or time available for anything extra. I didn't want to learn a new product. I didn't want to have to pay yet another subscription to some e-card or RSVP service that I wasn't even sure my stakeholders could open and use, because a lot of them work in healthcare, and healthcare IT has a lot of hurdles that are really hard to get through with different security measures. So I think I came up with a very clean and efficient solution using just my Google Workspace apps and Relay.app's automation. So I'm going to take you through that process, both how I spend time thinking through the automation that I'm designing and how it actually is built and functions in the end. So stay tuned to the end of the video if you want to see all that. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you like what you see, and support the work that Relay.app is doing with this amazing tool. So when I'm looking to design any sort of workflow or process, the first thing I always want to do is map out for myself what actions I want to take and how I will accomplish those. So let's work through how I would plan this workflow and how I did plan this workflow for my particular use case. The very first thing in automation that we need to consider is the trigger. If you're not familiar with automation, think of the trigger as what needs to happen in order to set off the chain reaction of events that you are trying to accomplish. So this could be some sort of email that you receive. It could be on a particular date and time if you wanted. For this use case, what I want to do is send emails out to everyone on my contact list for this event in one batch. Now, fortunately for me, Relay.app has a really handy native batch action that we can use, and I'll show you how to do that. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do it with a manual start, meaning that I will tell Relay when I want all these emails to be sent. The only other thing we need for this trigger is the row data from our Google Sheet. So that's how we're going to trigger. We're basically going to have it go off when I push the big red button, so to speak. So on these next few slides, you're going to see three things. You have a step, we have a description, which is what is happening written in plain language so that we can work through the logic of it, and then the actual action that we're going to take inside of Relay. So if at any point you want to duplicate this workflow, the final slide of this will be available in the description of this video. So our first step was that trigger. What we wanted to do, send to all contacts on the list in one batch. Action, it's going to be a batch action and a manual start that will pull data from our Google Sheet rows. Next up, for step 1, I'm going to tell it to send a customized email to all of the contacts that are on that list. And we'll be able to do this really handily with Relay.app's Gmail integration and their send email action. The next step, step 2, we're going to wait for our invitees to respond. And this is where I think the magic really happens, because when you're dealing with external event management tools and software, you always have to worry, one, will it get through my invitees' work firewall? Will it make it to them? Will they be able to access it? And number 2, you have to worry about how to use the back end of that. How will you see, as the event organizer, what is happening, who's responded, and all of that? And number 3, will that data actually be in a usable form for you? With this particular step, we're going to wait for an invitee response. And what that means is that those we have sent an invitation email to will be able to respond in natural language just directly to the email with no external forms or software. And the reason that we can do that has to do with the next steps. We're going to use the built-in AI function for extracting data to look at their email response and extract what we need based on what they've said. It sounds like magic, too good to be true, but I promise you it's not. So stay with me to find out how. Within Relay, we're going to use an AI action called extract for this. Step 4, we want to take that data that the AI identified from their email, and we want to actually add it to that original spreadsheet so that we have a centralized location for all of those responses, which will make our jobs as managers of the event so much easier. We'll do this with the Google Sheet integration in Relay.app and the action of updating rows. And then lastly, I want to get a little ambitious here, and we are going to also add some branching logic at the end, because I want to send each individual responder a confirmation email of their response based on what they've said, whether they're going to attend or not attend the actual event. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get building in Relay.app. So jumping in, we start with what we have here. We have some dummy data, and hopefully you've realized that, these people are not necessarily real, and I like to have some fun with dummy data. Very simply, I have who's a recipient and who's not. And here we are going to be awarding Peter Pan and Wendy Darling as our recipients. Now, I've set up the rest of the form already to accept what their RSVP status is. In other words, are they coming or not? What their mode of attendance is going to be, in person or via Zoom if they are attending virtually. And I also have allowance for them to tell me the number of guests that they want to bring and the names of those guests. I also have a list for any dietary restrictions we need to know about. So, very simple sheet. It took me a couple minutes to set up. Most of you, if you're event planning, probably already have a sheet that looks something like this ready-made. So now it's time to go ahead and start building. So we have our sheet. I am here logged into Relay.app. And what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to come up here and click Start New Workflow. And what opens up is this very clean interface. I love their UI. It's one of their favorite things about them. And what we're going to do is we're going to start first off by titling the workflow, because then if the page reloads or my internet crashes, I can find it again. And we're just going to call this Award Ceremony 2024. And we'll leave that as is for now. As I said, we always start with a trigger in automation. And here in Relay, they make that very clear. You have a trigger box, you must fill it in before you proceed to the next step. So we're going to go ahead and add a trigger. And if you recall, what I wanted to do was start this run in a batch. So we'll go start run in batches, and we'll come over here, and I decided to do it manually since this is a demonstration. And once you have that happen, you have this window open up, and this is where you're going to actually tell it how to run the trigger. I'm going to open this up just so you can see a little bit better. Most of the time I work with it in the side. So first we need to select the app. Now remember, we're taking this as our rows from our Google Sheet. So I'm going to come over here and Google Sheets. I'm going to select rows. Now I need to select a sheet. And since I worked on it recently, you can see that my award ceremony guest is right here at the top. If it wasn't, I could simply search for the title of the document and find it very easily. Now, once I click on it, I am going to go ahead and tell it which of the tabs that are in my sheet I want to use. I want to use guests. So it says right here, every time this workflow is started, so when I start it manually, what do I want it to do? My options are to trigger runs for all rows, or I could set up filters and only run it for rows that match criteria that I had. This is really handy in things like student management or employee onboarding, where you need to trigger it only for people who haven't met criteria. In my case, I want to run it for all rows. And if I wanted to, I could add some additional hand-typed inputs, but I'm not going to do that today. So to keep this straightforward, I'm going to go ahead and just accept that we are triggering the run for every row in the spreadsheet and that our data looks right. So now I will close it and we have our trigger. Now, my second step was going to be that I want to send an email to everyone on that list. So we're going to come down here and we're going to come down and we're going to find our Gmail. And if you can't find it right off the bat, you can always do this. And I want to go ahead and send an email. I have not yet connected my Gmail, so I'll show you just how easy that is. We're going to come in here and I'm going to choose the account I want to connect. We'll select all and we'll hit continue. And we're now connected. That's all there is to it. Again, I'll open this for ease for you guys to see. And I could leave this as just this way and it would come from Relay.app. But I want to make sure that since a lot of the people on my list are working in healthcare, that it gets through IT firewalls. So I'm going to go ahead and send it from my own Gmail so that it comes straight from my Gmail account. Now, who's going to be my recipient? Well, we get that information from one of two places. We can get it from the manual start, which was our first step, or we can get it from the row that we're using. And you can see Relay's already figured out that the guest email is likely what we want. So we're going to go ahead and click guest email. So we now have set up a draft of an email that's coming from me going to the guest email. And all I'm going to do is put in my subject. Let's see, 2024 award ceremony, invitation. And I always like to put in when I want them to respond by, just because. And then I'm going to come back here. And in the second tab, I have my emails all laid out. So I'm going to grab this invitation email, copy it, and paste it. And now I'm going to format it how I want. This is a rich text editor, so you can do things like bold, italics, underlined, links, even pictures, as you'll see in a second. So I like to have a space here, so I'm going to come in here, and where I had put name, I want to go ahead and put the actual name of that individual. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go ahead and select guest name, because that is the row back here in our awards ceremony that has their name in it. We're going to go ahead and I'm just going to format this how I would like. And the way I want to do that is, because I want it to be a little bit pretty, like I mentioned, I have this beautiful sort of invitation cover that I have made in Canva. I've already downloaded it, and I'm going to come over here and we're going to add a picture. So now we have this beautiful picture in here instead of just a plain email. If I wanted to, I could add attachments. I always like to test my steps, one of my favorite things that you can do here. And the way I would do it is I would come over here and I would select a role for someone that I wanted to see what the email would look like. And I'm going to go ahead and hit test. Now, remember when you do this, that this actually sends the email to the person. Since all of these are routed to my Gmail, I'm not so concerned about it, but it's worth noting that that does happen. My next step is I want to wait for these people to reply. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to come here and we're going to go to flow control. Flow control is anytime you want to change or pause or skip any part of your run. There's a lot of things you can do in here. But what I want to show you is right here down at the bottom is this wait for reply. And it's a Gmail specific integration. So I click wait for reply. I tell it which email I want to have a reply to, and I want it to be the one from step 1 right here, this email. There's numbers next to each item, so you can always tell which one you're linking to. All right, so we're waiting for reply. So now I'm going to tell it to go. All the guests will receive an email. We're going to go ahead and wait for the guest to reply. And then when the reply comes, we're going to go ahead and give this to AI to pull out our information. This saves the guest from having to go to some external form or format their response in an exact way. They can just respond in natural language and AI will tell us what happened. And what we're going to do is we're going to tell it to AI extract, which is defining and extracting information from the data. So we grab AI extract. I'm going to change it to GPT-4. You can choose, lovely, whether you're using 3.5 or 4. You can also link it to other AI models if you so choose. And I want it to extract from the email response. Remember, number 1 is the email we sent. Number 2 over here is the reply. So we want to pull it from the reply. We want to pull it from the body. We know that we're going to need a response in terms of whether they're attending or not. We're going to call this RSVP for text. And we are going to go ahead and save it. We're going to add another one, and we are going to go ahead, and this will be a number, and we're going to call it number of guests, and save it. We're going to go ahead and grab some more text, and we're going to call this guest names. We're going to go ahead and add also some more text for dietary restrictions. And we also almost forgot we need to add mode of attendance for Zoom versus in person. Now we're going to create a step, come down here to Google Sheets, and we're going to update a row because we already have the rows. We want to add information. And the row we're going to pick is going to be the same one from step 1, and we are going to add the fields that we should update. So we're going to update RSVP, and we're going to update that with the model response for RSVP. We're going to go ahead and add number of guests, and we're going to update with number of guests. We're going to add guest names, and you see the pattern at this point. We're going to add mode. We're going to fill in mode of attendance. And last but not least, dietary restrictions and dietary restrictions. Okay, so before we go on to the last step, what I want to do is go ahead and do a small test batch where I'm going to do just a single example row. I'm going to stick with my Cleopatra example in row 2. I'm going to go ahead and start the run, and this is just going to run through it. It's the same as if it were running for real. So remember, if you're doing this, this will in fact send emails to the recipients. So I'm going to go ahead and start the run, and let's just see. So now it has sent the email to Cleo's email. We'll just come over here and give it a wait for it to go ahead and give me that email. And here we have it. Award ceremony respond by due June 1st. Dear Cleo, join us. And here is our beautiful email, just as we planned. And I'm going to go ahead and reply and say, hey, Kaitlin, I look forward to it. I will attend in person with my husband, Brian. Please note that I am allergic to dairy. Thus, Cleo. And we'll go ahead and send. All right. Now we're going to give it just a moment for Relay.app to realize that a reply has been sent. And that's how fast it went through the workflow. I went ahead and refreshed, and it's already gone through. So it received its reply. And then we come over here, and here's what the GPT model did. It pulled out the message. It pulled out an RSVP of yes. Guest names are Cleo and Brian. Number of guests 2. Mode of attendance in person, and allergic to dairy, like magic. Let's check on our row update. Here we go. And there's all the information already neatly in place for me. The last thing we wanted to do is we wanted to go ahead and set up some branching logic based on their response. I'm going to go ahead and show you using flow control. So we are going to come over here and we're going to select a rule-based path. And a rule-based path just means I'm going to tell it under what conditions it's going to follow which path. You can add as many paths as you want. We're going to need 3 of them. And we're going to start here with path A, And I like to rename my paths based on what they are. So this is an RSV of yes and in-person attendance. So we're going to add a rule that when we see in our model response that the RSVP is yes, and when the mode contains in-person, then we have our rules, right? So that's our first path. Path B is going to be yes and Zoom. And we're going to add the rule. And then C, not attending. And we follow this path. You can either leave it when no other path matches, but I prefer all of them to have rules when their RSVP contains no. And now you can see we have 3 tabs, one representing a path. Now, only one of these will be taken based on what it finds in the responses up above. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to reply to all. And we're going to reply to our email that we received in step 2. And we are going to go ahead and come over here and we're going to grab our in-person response that I've already written. And we're going to copy and paste it. And we'll once again add the guest name. And I will format it how I like. You can see it included the URL that I had to the map to the parking garage already. And it will work great like that. And at this point, that path is now done. So path 1, they received that email. Path 2 and 3, we're going to do the same for the different emails that I've composed. When it's time to start a batch of runs, you come into your workbook here, and right here at the top, you have start a batch of runs. We're going to go ahead and click that. And we're going to batch all matching rows. If I wanted to, I could select a single row again, but I want to start the entire batch. So we send it out. And over here, we can now see that all of these are running. Now they're going to run, and then they're all going to enter waiting because they're all waiting for an email reply. So let's go ahead and do a quick reply from the other one that I sent to this email. Here we go. And here we are. So dear Peter Pan, and he's going to respond, thank you. I will attend via Zoom as I cannot make it in person. It will just be me. Smiley face, because it's Peter Pan. And no dietary issues for me. I can eat anything. And there we have it. We send it. Message is now sent. And now we wait for Relay to catch that Peter Pan here has gone ahead and has a reply. So I just heard the email hit, and now we're going. Look how fast this goes. If I were doing this on my own, I'd have to switch back and forth and type everything manually into my spreadsheet. But you can see it already picked the correct path, yes, and via Zoom, and it replied back to my message. So let's see what reply he sent. Right here. It says, thank you. We'll attend via Zoom, and we responded, we look forward to celebrating, and all our details for Zoom. All done. Now the rest of these won't go because, of course, I'm here and it's me, and I'm not going to respond to every single one. But let's just, before we finish up with this, go back over here so you can see just how great this really is. So I now have, for the 2 that responded in their natural language by clicking reply to email, no extra forms, no extra nothing. For Cleo and Peter, I now have everything already filled in accurately, and I didn't have to do anything other than initially send the email. This would have worked for 100 guests. It would have worked for, I don't know if it would go all the way to 1,000. I've never tried that. Question for you, Relay.app team. But I do know from my own experience that this works great for events of around 50 individuals. You can set it up with pathways for recipients to be different from guests. You can do all sorts of things. Really, your imagination is the limit. But I really genuinely believe that Relay.app is the way to do it because building is so intuitive, the user interface is so clean, and it's really, really affordable. Everything I showed you here, you can do for free in Relay. Now, the limit comes with the number of automations you can run per month on the free plan, but take a look at that. And if that's all you run, by all means, jump on the free plan. It integrates to so many different tools, and you can do incredibly cool, complex things that use both AI and human-in-the-loop steps where you're in control. I hope that you found this extremely interesting, or at least informative, and got you thinking about how you can use automation in your everyday tasks. You don't have to be a developer to automate, and I think Relay.app is really showing us how that's true. Feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you can get updates of all the cool stuff that they're up to at Relay.app. Lastly, feel free to go ahead and ask in the comments any questions you may have about what I did, or give recommendations for other things you'd like to see. Either way, thanks for hanging in there with me to the end. Appreciate you all and happy automating.